Hello and welcome. Today I am going to talk to you about all of the books that I read in April. So I read a total of 8 books during April, and some of them were physical books and some of them were ebooks, and I thought I would go through and tell you what I read, what I thought of them, my star rating. So I just think it'll be good to get started. So the first book that I read was Big Little Lies by Laine Moriarty, and this is a book about a single mom and her son, and it's based in Australia, and they move to this little town, and her son is starting school, but there's a lady called Madeline. So the mum's called Jane and her son's called Ziggy, and they meet a woman called Madeline on their first day and they become friends. And this is told in sort of like past. So there's been an incident at a school quiz. So the parents have had like this sort of fancy dress quiz. I think it's like a trivia night, and somebody has died, but you don't know who has died and how. And so it sort of flicks back and forth between the two. So it starts with the incident, but you don't fully understand what it is. Then it takes you back and you meet Jane and Ziggy and Madeline, and it takes you through. And then at the end of each chapter, it has little snippets from all the parents in this school making comments about the other parents and things like that. So you don't actually know what exactly has happened and how it's happened, and then it sort of feeds through and gives you the information until the end. And this is one that I had on my physical TBR for such a long time. I actually bought this in a charity shop. I'm sure my sister told me to pick it up, but it's reading the back I didn't realise that it was more of like a thrillery whodunit murder mystery type book, because it talks about like the school runs and things like that, and there's an incident involving the children. I thought it was going to be a little bit more about just kids and parents, things like that, which it is, but it's much more of a, as I said, intriguing story. And there obviously is a TV show about this, which I haven't watched or anything like that. But yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I didn't guess the ending at all, which is quite good for me, because usually I have a rough idea of what's happening, but I didn't in this. It caught me completely off guard, so I really, really enjoyed that. The second book that I read this month was actually an arc, so I will, as with all ebooks that I talk about, I will pop the little picture here, so hopefully it will be either side depending on which works the best. But yeah, so the book that I read second was Queen of Tempest of Sin by Helena M. Craggs, and I'm very, very lucky to be part of her street team for all 3 of her books. So the first one is Queen of Shadows and Roses, there's Queen of Tempest and Sin, and then there is a 3rd book coming out, and they are part of the Brothers of Olympus series. And this is, as you can imagine, they are about Greek gods. And this second book, Queen of Tempest and Sin, is about Poseidon. So it's about, the main character is called Cordelia, and she is an assassin, and she is given the job of assassinating Poseidon, but she doesn't actually know at the beginning, when she gets given the job, that the target is Poseidon, the god. So in this world, gods are known and they do roam Earth, and they own different things. So Hades owns a nightclub, which he is in the first book. The first book is Hades and Persephone. I really enjoyed that one too. So yes, they are sort of known. So gods and demigods and things like that are known, but she doesn't know that the person that she has been tasked with killing is Poseidon. So she has to obviously try that. It doesn't go to plan, but and then there's an attraction and lots of things happen, and yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I think the main character is a really good, strong female character. She's really sassy. She will put, even though he is a god, she puts him in his place. She does not care. And yeah, so I gave that 4 stars as well, and that is expected to be released on the 4th of June. So it is not available yet, but I was very lucky to have an advance copy of it to read for Helena, as I have done previously for her. So yeah, look out for that one. The next book that I read was Priest, which is the first book in the Priest series. And I don't know if you will have seen, but I did talk about this quite a lot in my very first reading vlog. And it is about, as you can imagine, a priest. And he becomes a priest because his sister was abused by a priest, and just a trigger warning, she took her own life, and he struggled a lot and then decided to become a priest and sort of right the wrongs that happened, turned back to God, and then meets a woman. Well, technically doesn't even meet her, but speaks to a woman in confessional, and then decides that actually he wants to give up being a priest for her. And so he battles with this. And unfortunately, I did not enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars. It just wasn't for me. I found the main character, the male main character, I found, well, actually both of them, the male main character and the female main character, were both really insufferable. I didn't feel like there was any actual chemistry between the two of them. I thought that it was all just, they found each other attractive, and that was it. They never seemed to actually have a connection. I couldn't see them, other than the physical relationship, I couldn't actually see it working. So yeah, personally for me, that was a 2 star, and I won't be continuing on with that series. The next book that I read was Talking at Night by Claire Daverley, and this is about 2 people. So one is the female character Rosie, and she has a twin brother, and her twin brother's best friend Will is seen as a little bit of a bad boy, has a bit of a reputation, and is sort of like a bit wild, and she is very quiet, shy, and they sort of start talking, and obviously both find each other attractive. There is a tragedy that happens in this, and it just means that Will and Rosie kind of go through life and they're connected, but something always seems to crop up as a reason why they don't get together. So it follows them through different periods of their lives and seeing how they connect, and then they'll stop talking for a while and then they'll start talking again, and it's, as I said, just a bit of will they, won't they, are they meant to be together, and that kind of thing. Now, this was bought to me by my sister for Christmas. Not even last Christmas, Christmas before. She absolutely loved this book, and so she bought it for me and said, you know, I think you should read it. I personally gave this 3 stars. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, I just thought it was middle of the road. But also, personally, and a lot, which I didn't realise, a lot of the things that people say about this, that it's very much it's like Sally Rooney, Normal People type of book, and I did not enjoy Normal People by Sally Rooney. And if I'd have known that that's what this was compared to, I may not have picked it up. But as I said, it was a gift, so I gave it a try. As I said, there were sad points in this. It was, you know, not a particularly fun read either, so it was quite depressing. But it did deal with things like depression and OCD and things like that, which I thought were really, really good representations. I personally cannot say whether the OCD was particularly truthful to that, but in my it did feel like it was realistic. It wasn't played off in any way. It was just seemed like it was part of the character. It seemed to be done well. But yeah, I gave this 3 stars. I then moved on to another arc. So this one was Heart Racer by Megan Avery, and this is a STEM and sports romance. So this is about 2 characters, Keely and Max. So Keely is studying science and Max is studying sports. I say that it's American, so yeah, so he is doing track and she is doing science, and they are both looking for a grad loan. So both of them applied for a grad loan and it was unfortunately denied, and they need to find a new one. Now it's quite late in the academic year for this, so they go to their counsellor, and they both go separately. There is one loan now available, this Find Your Passion loan, but it only has one place. So they are then both trying to ensure that they get the loan. But it turns out that they knew each other from when they were younger, and they reconnect and it starts a romance. But they are both obviously knowing that one of them will get this loan and the other one won't. And so that's looming in the background of this. Now, I again gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was an easy read. It was inoffensive. I found the characters quite boring. That I felt like Keely, the female main character, felt very young, considering I think they were meant to be sort of like 21, 22, and she just seemed to act very naive. She didn't seem to really understand anything that was happening. It was all just like, oh well, I'm making this list, I've got this checklist, it'll be fine. And at points, like, she was just kind of a bad friend, and I understand she was going through a lot, but she just ignored her friend for ages because she then liked this guy. And yeah, it was a little bit predictable. It was a bit, you know, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, because I feel like when it's done well, it works. I have read and loved pretty much all of Ali Hazelwood's books, and a lot of those are very, very similar in the sense of it's very formulaic, you know what is going to happen. But I feel like the writing style and the characters make up for that you want these characters to get together. With these 2, I wasn't bothered. There was a point when they finally got together and I just didn't care. I was like, okay. Whereas usually in a romance book like this, I am desperate for them to get together. I'm desperate for them to finally realise that they both like each other. I just wasn't getting that from this. So yeah, unfortunately that was just a 3-star. As I said, inoffensive. It wasn't anything new. It was just much the same as what I've read previously. I then moved on to a cowboy romance, and that was Swift and Saddled by Lyla Sage. This is the second book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and this follows Ada and Weston. So Weston wants to redo one of the houses on his ranch, and he has been emailing back and forth with Ada, who is an interior designer. She's recently set up a business and wants her to come and work on refurbing this house to turn it into like guest houses for on the ranch. Ada turns up in this new town, I guess is what you'd call it, in the area, and ends up in a dive bar because she's hungry and wants some food, but unfortunately they don't serve food. And while she's there, she sees this really attractive cowboy and his dog. And for some reason, out of the blue, she just decides to kiss him. So she kisses this guy and they're making out, and then they get interrupted by the owner of the bar. She kind of comes back to herself, realises that that was a really bizarre thing to do, and leaves. She then just kind of chalks it up to bad decisions. Don't have to worry about that anymore. She's lost her bag because she left it at the bar. She's thinking, okay, great, not the best, but I've got this new job. I'm just going to pretend that never happened and go to this new job. But lo and behold, she turns up to this new job, and who would be her boss but the guy that she kissed? So yeah, she then has to work with Weston on this whole project, and she is trying to remain professional and not do anything else. She's like, no, I don't want to get involved, but he is very much like attracted to her, wants to pursue the relationship, and in the end they do, you know, realize that they both like each other. It's a really, really fun and just small town sort of romance books. It's kind of like a Hallmark book but with cowboys. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and I will be continuing the rest of the series, and I gave this a 4-star. I then read a Kindle book, an ebook, and that was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, and this is the first book in the Shepherd King series. So this book is about the main character, Elspeth, and there is something in this world that's like a sickness. So children can catch this sickness, and then it kind of gives them this kind of magic that then slowly kills them. So any child that has this sickness has to be caught and killed. But Elspeth this happened to her. She got the illness, but she was hidden. Her father sent her away to live with her aunt and uncle, and she was hidden, so nobody knew. And part of this, the magic that she receives, is a voice inside of her head, and she calls it the nightmare. And she has to hide this from everybody because she is not allowed to have this, and she will get killed if anyone finds out. And then there's another part of the magic system, which are cards that people collect. So she meets this highwayman out in the dark, and she ends up on this quest with him and some other people, trying to find the rest of these cards to help with this whole magic issue, and there's mist, and there's all this that's happening in the world. It took me a little while to get into the beginning of this book because there is a lot of information with the world building, with understanding the magic system, all the characters, all those kind of things. But once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. I found it so atmospheric. I found it so just different to a lot of other fantasy books. As I said, the magic system's really interesting. I thought the romance was really good. I liked that the romance didn't feel rushed. They didn't really get into any of the romance till about 70% of the way through, which means that they had actually built up a connection, and it felt natural to me that, you know, they've been together for a while, traveling on this, they've bonded, and so it made sense rather than it being really quick, fast paced in that sense. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to starting the next book, because it is a duology, so I will be picking up the next book hopefully quite soon, as I would love to find out what happens next. So I gave One Dark Window 4 stars. It's difficult, as I think that it could potentially be a 4.5. I'm unsure, but I don't tend to give half ratings, so I have gone with a 4 for this time. But yes, I'm really hoping that the next book will be just as good, if not better. The last book that I read, that I finished, is Give Me More by Sara Cate, and this is the 3rd book in the Salacious Players Club. And I'm just going to say this is a very spicy, you know, book. It is about people who own a club. So you know, if you are interested in this at all, please do check the trigger warnings, because it is a very particular type of book. And as I said, this is the 3rd book in the Salacious Player series. Now this one is about a married couple and their best friend, and they are touring around other clubs to try and get a feel for what other clubs are like, to see what they can do to improve their club. So their club is made for people to explore their different kinks, their sexuality, all these kind of things in a safe and non-judgmental environment. And so they are exploring other clubs like this to try and get ideas and build connections with people to improve their club. And there's a main couple, they are married, and then it's their best friend. And the husband of the couple asks his best friend to sleep with his wife while he watches, and it kind of goes from there. It's about these people navigating this particular thing that they're interested in. Is it acceptable? Is it not acceptable? And as I said, they are very, very spicy. You know, it does talk about internalized homophobia. Then there is polyamory in here. There's those kind of things. So if this is something you'd be interested in, I would say just do your research on that and just make sure that that is something that you are happy to read. I will say this one was actually my favourite that I've read of them so far. So I gave this 4 stars. It was very nearly a 5-star, but unfortunately the very end had something in there that I personally do not really like in my books, especially like these kind of books, and so that just knocked it down for me. So again, if I did half stars, I would say this probably close to a 4.5, but I have kept it at a 4 just for consistency. And again, without obviously spoiling or anything, the thing that happened, that is just my personal preference that I do not enjoy. Somebody else may love that, and that's perfectly fine. It wasn't necessarily anything bad to do with the writing or the plot, it's just my personal preference. So I gave this 4 stars. And then just because I am filming this a little bit early, so I'm filming it a few days before the end of the month, I just thought I'd quickly talk about the book that I'm currently reading, because I am hopeful that I will get this finished up by the end of the month, hopefully. And that is Some Lucky Day by Ellie Dean, and I am 320 pages in, and I think this book is 563 pages, so I'm over halfway. And I find that these, once I'm into it, can go quite quickly, so I'm hoping that I can get this finished tomorrow ideally, but possibly not. I may not get this done by the end of the month, but I'll just tack it on the end anyway. So this is the 7th book in the Cliffhaven series, and this is about a boarding house in Cliffhaven called Beachview, and it is owned by Peggy Riley and her family, and they all live there. And this is set during World War II, and this book starts in May 1942. And the main character of this book is a young girl called Kitty, who is a pilot, and she unfortunately has an accident. She has a crash in one of the planes that she is flying, and this changes her whole life, and she has to come to terms with that. And in doing so, she meets Peggy, who owns the boarding house and who is just a absolutely amazing lady. And yes, she meets this huge cast of characters. Now these books are real palate cleansers for me. They're a little bit of a guilty pleasure in the sense that they are, like, as I said, fun. World War II. My sister always jokes, books that your nan reads, which is actually true because I got all of these books from my nan. She read them all and gave them to me. So yes, I like to read one of these months. So this 7th book, there's, as I said, a whole cast of characters, because each book follows a different person that comes to join this boarding house and then moves on from the boarding house and things happen. So yes, I'm really hopeful that I can get this finished to round it off, but we shall see. So that concludes all of the books. So I read 4 physical books, 4 ebooks, and out of the 4 ebooks, 2 of those were ARCs, and I gave 4 5 stars, 1 2 star, and 2 3 stars. So not too bad. I didn't have any 5 stars this month, which is fine. I am trying to be a little bit more critical in the way that I rate things, so I'm going to be working on that and looking at potentially how I rate my books. But yeah, even 2 stars for me, because I know the type of books that I like to read. I tend to go for mostly 3 4 5 stars. I don't tend to get many 2s or 1s, but again, this is something that I'm going to look into and see if there's a good rating system that I can do, because at the moment it's mostly just vibes, how I feel at the time, and I do find that I can be quite generous with ratings. So that is something that I will be looking into. So I would just hold up. These are all the physical books. Obviously this one is almost, I'm part way through it, so it counts. But these are the books physical books that I read this month, along with 4 ebooks. So yeah, I'd love it if you let me know what books you read this month, or if there's any of these books that I've talked about today that you have any opinions on. Did you really love Priest? If so, I'd love to hear your reasons why not, anything like that. But yeah, thank you for watching.